In this video, we're going to be talking about fornication and what is fornication. There's a variety of different definitions for the word when you go from different Christian YouTube videos that talk about it. Some people believe that the word means simply premarital sex, and for other people, it's a much broader term. Um, you know, when you go to the Greek, the general term is porneia, and it does essentially mean sexual immorality. So I'm assuming that when the Bible condemns fornication, it's condemning any type of sex that is immoral, immoral behavior. Um, so I would say it is a much broader term that covers premarital sex and also covers things like incest, homosexuality, adultery, and many other things. Now, um, you know, fornication is a sin, okay? The Bible says that we need to abstain from sexual immorality. We need to abstain from prostitution. We need to abstain from incest, obviously, pedophilia, bestiality, and we even need to abstain from sex outside of marriage and adultery. But there are people on YouTube that actually want to make you believe that sex outside of marriage is okay, and they'll say that fornication doesn't actually mean sex outside of marriage. They'll say that because the word is sexual immorality, they'll play word games and they'll end up saying it doesn't actually mean sex outside of marriage. And they might go back to the law of Moses where God gives them kind of the rules and the layouts of who you can't sleep with. And he talks about your aunt, your uncle, your father, your brothers, your sisters. He lays out a big bunch of stuff, an animal, somebody of the same gender, and different things. But a lot of people point out the fact, they say, why doesn't he say your girlfriend? Why doesn't he say your boyfriend? Why doesn't he say that you can't sleep with, your significant other? And the reason is because in the Jewish culture, at least most of the time in the Jewish culture, when a man slept with a woman, they were considered married at that point. Okay, so if a man slept with a woman, she was considered his wife. That's kind of how they operated it. In fact, they didn't have wedding rings back then. In fact, that was kind of how you sealed the deal when you got married. The two of you become one flesh through the sexual intercourse. Now, that is not the way that 90% of cultures operate, right? When you go out and you start taking the gospel to the Gentile world, that's not how we operate. We don't consider people married just because they had sex. We just consider they slept with each other. So that's the reason why in the book of Acts, when they're going out to these foreign nations that has different customs and do things differently, they said, we want you to give people these commandments. And they said, stay away from things that strangled, stay away from idols, stay away from different things like that. But they said make sure that you stay away from sexual immorality. Make sure you stay away from premarital sex. This becomes more of a importance when you're dealing with people who practice it. Alright, so the Jews did not essentially, I'm not saying they never did it, but for the most part the Jewish customs didn't practice fornication. They understood, at least a sector of them understood, that if you sleep with a woman, she becomes your wife. So, because our cultures do not have that custom, and we don't consider you married just because you sleep with somebody, this is where premarital sex becomes such an important theme in the New Testament. And that's why it seems like they don't talk much about premarital sex in the Old Testament, and in the New Testament, it's all they talk about. It's because they're dealing with a world that's practicing the sin. Alright? So when people tell you that, if you go to the Greek, you find out premarital sex is okay, be really careful of people like that, because most likely if somebody's trying to make an argument in favor of premarital sex, they might be doing it. And, if you're like me and you're a virgin and you're waiting to marriage to have sex, you don't want to throw away your virginity because you got mixed up listening to some false teacher. So, yeah, avoid people that's going to encourage you to do things that deliberately go against the Bible. And I can also assure you with certainty that if you look up the ante-Nicene Fathers, the Catholic Church, the Eastern Orthodox Church, all the Protestant groups, and pretty much every Christian sector that's ever existed has believed that sex outside of marriage is sin. This isn't a modern day belief. This is something that Christians have always essentially believed. So if you're someone who is fornicating, and this is true no matter what, but it's especially true if you name the name of the Lord, you need to repent. Get right with Jesus and cease from committing this act. And then from that point on, wait in the marriage to have sex. And if you're already waiting in the marriage to have sex, then just stay on the right track. God bless for watching.